Aloha. These are just a collection of thoughts that I have that will be directed mostly towards people who've been around Flat Earth for some time, and for people who produce content about Flat Earth or the not globe Earth. The first thing is, will Flat Earth ever outgrow the mentality of focusing only on the science of flat Earth in reference to the science of the heliocentric model? In other words, flat versus globe. When will flat Earth realize that instead of focusing on the magic tricks that have been cast upon the people, instead of focusing on the magic tricks, when will you start exposing the magicians? For over 2 years now, the majority of big flat earth channels have focused only on the magic tricks, which I'm not saying is not relevant to focus on. But if you focus on that for a certain amount of time, you have to hit that point to where you realize that, hey, we can't speak about only this anymore. If we're going to address anything that will have any kind of empowerment for the people in this situation, you have to speak about the power behind the illusions. Speaking about the illusions themselves is no different than what the mainstream media or people like Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and TYT, all these people, they only talk about the storyline that emotionally triggers you or emotionally locks you into a storyline that really doesn't address any kind of perspective that will change anything. It will only get you attracted to the entertainment factor of a storyline. It won't go into what needs to be addressed to remove the power or remove the foundations of the programs in the first place. It's obviously very suspicious for some people or some channels who constantly stay on this program. I mean, this is where the whole shill mentality comes from, when you pretty much just listen to this monotonous banter over and over again that never really taps into the foundation, and after a certain amount of time actually becomes extremely suspicious when those topics of the roots of this program, the topics of the magicians themselves, the infrastructure of this program never gets addressed. Something becomes very suspicious, and you don't have to be called a shill. You don't have to be any of that stuff. You actually are already doing the work that a shill would do when you don't reference this information. Not referencing important information is no different than certain people saying racism doesn't exist, or white privilege doesn't exist, or white supremacy doesn't exist because of whatever perspective you want to come from. That's completely absurd to say something doesn't exist just because you either want to avoid the subject or think you have some sort of higher consciousness or higher perspective. Skipping over that mentality, skipping over those realities, is not only dangerous, but what it does is it creates gaps in people, no different than what the New Age program does when they say everything just needs to be about love and light, and we need to come together under this universal understanding that we are of alien brethren and they are just of a higher intelligence and they are our healer. They are everything to us, and we need to just work together as one. You can't just skip from level 1 to level 10 and think everything is going to be okay. It doesn't work like that. This is why this whole physical reality takes so long, because the kinks need to be referenced, and they need to be knocked out so people can actually heal before you can activate something that's organic. You can't just say, one individual say that, oh yeah, this is what needs to happen. No, all of the history books that lead up to now have to be read, have to be understood, interpreted, so we do not repeat the same patterns. If you leave gaps in your reality by not addressing particular subjects, you will create a system that will be no different than the previous system. It will repeat history, and it is more dangerous than the mainstream media and all of these other individuals out there who are trying to distract you. There's no difference from distracting somebody from a destructive mentality like war in the prison and military industrial complex from somebody trying to distract somebody, whether they know it or not, with the idea of peace and love and light. No, all of these perspectives need to be understood. The side effects to this destructive mentality that has been going on and on and on for years, 500 plus years of psychological warfare, will have an effect on not only the individual, but the culture and the mass consciousness overall. 500 plus years of racism existing, so much so that it was legal. It was legal to lynch people. It was legal to enslave people. It's legal to do all of these genocidal and maniacal programs by law. That does have a psychological effect. And I would actually go as far as saying it does affect the actual genetic coding of people, to where over time children will be affected by their upbringing. Their grandparents, their great-grandparents had to go through something. Their parents, their sons, their daughters, their granddaughters are all healing or not these programs, these systems that have existed for centuries. One realization like the flat earth, or one realization like you having a meaning and purpose in this reality, will not fix everything. We do not need medications right now. We do not need fix-it-quicks. We need to start addressing the foundations of a powerless mentality where you have people who maintain power and control over the masses. The systems put in place to maintain power over the masses are systems like the fiat currency system, the maritime admiralty system, the political game, the mainstream media, Hollywood inflaming the racist agenda, Hollywood inflaming the information that gets installed into the people as this is what you need to be focusing on. This is why Trump is out there. Trump is out there to get people focused on politics, to get people focused and locked in, emotionally locked in to the powerless program from an entertainment value perspective. This is no different than the globe being installed into people when the heliocentric model came into being. Giving people the globe as an entertainment value, looking up at the stars and the so-called planets was entertaining, and it was locked into your reality as truth. No different than Trump's perspectives on white supremacy, white nationalism, and the CNN and MSNBC perspective, TYT perspective, Alex Jones perspective. Those are locked into whoever's tuning into those channels. That's locked into their truth. That's what their truth is. And people cannot think for themselves because they are constantly in this codependent mentality that relies on others to give them their truth. There is no critical thought there. There is no thinking for themselves. This is the illusion maintained. And it's no different than people in the flat earth channels, big channels in the flat earth mentality, really capitalizing on that and just locking people into that linear thought pattern of flat versus globe, instead of empowering people to realize, hey, you know, we need to start asking questions about this system. We need to start generating some perspectives that expand the level of consciousness outside of the consciousness that created these enslavement programs to begin with. Otherwise, you're just going to be creating another commercial. You're going to be creating another entertainment factor that will have nothing to do with any kind of change. That is the commercial mentality that I'm seeing and have been seeing being expanded upon over these last couple of years within the so-called flat earth community. And it's only getting bigger with people talking about going mainstream and having all of these discussions where, you know, it's flat versus globe. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. What I'm saying is that, like I said in the beginning of this video, the people who have been around flat earth for some time now, start asking yourself, you know, are we going to have arguments about flat versus globe? How long? When is the cutoff point? When is the cutoff point for flat versus globe discussions or arguments or debates? When will that need to stop? And then ask yourself again, for the people who are talking about when flat earth goes mainstream, when will be what is the next step after that? People are going to start talking about it. Okay, that's understood. We already know the information that they're going to be talking about. So when they laugh at you first, then they try to throw some jacked up information or perspectives out there to just muddy the waters. Then they start to accept this information, co-opt it, and try to science the shit out of it. No different than, you know, what each individual did when they went into flat earth trying to debunk it. What the individual went through in realizing that we do not live on a globe is the same process that will be co-opted by the mainstream media. My question is, if you already know that process, what are the next steps as an empowered critical thinker to remove the power grid instead of gift wrapping it for the so-called powers that be to just sell another deception? What is your next step? Because it ain't got shit to do with debating flat versus globe. And it ain't got shit to do with putting all your eggs in the basket of once flat earth goes mainstream, everything will be okay. No, you're talking about the magic spells. The biggest side effect to the heliocentrism deception is to create slaves by creating artificial gods and artificial kings through belief systems, through illusions. The planets, the stars, the astrology, all of that is locked into the God's perspective of the religious programs. The mainstream religions control. It's the left and the right hand. This is why they have to tell you there has to be a separation between church and state. Why is that even a question? Why is that even a topic that's being brought up? It's because that statement is in place to make you automatically, subconsciously, before any kind of thoughts come into being about there is no separation between church and state. Since that has been repeated over and over and over again, you actually believe it to be true, if not consciously, definitely subconsciously, because from a slave perspective, you can't do anything about it because the subconscious will just follow along with whatever the other people's subconscious. This is following the herd, the slave mentality of following the herd, which is pretty much my entire point of this whole video. Flat Earth makes it more obvious that this power grid is locked together in many different ways. And the glue that holds it together is largely illusion. But the it that is being held together is the slave mentality. The it programs that hold that are being held together are, like I said, the monetary system, the maritime admiralty system, the legal name program, the person, like you think you're this government entity based upon your legal name instead of the being. This is what locks us into the physical reality before the soul. This is why this entire reality is flipped upside down and reversed, because internally, subconsciously, unconsciously, and consciously, we are all flipped upside down in reverse when we put our physical reality out in front of the more vibrant part of who and what we are, which is the soul, which is obviously related or connected to the existence, the meaning and purpose of existing at all. This is, from my perspective, what flat earth, what are the biggest things that flat earth actually brings to the surface, is that you have a meaning and a purpose. You are something that expands beyond the limitations of the materialistic mind control program, which is the physical reality. You have a higher mind. You are the higher mind. You are the soul connected to some kind of spirit energy that is in all living things. So what is the meaning and purpose of that, and what are you supposed to do with that? Simply just bringing it to the surface, and that's not going to change everything. Like I said earlier, you can have all the people in the world who realize that the earth is no longer a globe anymore. But is it going to matter if they still are locked into a slave, powerless mentality? Let's just say tomorrow, all of the people woke up and realized the earth was not a globe. Now what? Well, if they're still relying on the fiat currency system, if they still have no understanding of their meaning and purpose of this reality, if they have no understanding of their history, then they will be repeating that history. They will be addressing this perspective or this information from a slave mentality. This is why I said it's so dangerous to just be saying, oh, well, everything will be okay once flat earth goes mainstream. No, it won't. No different than people saying, well, everything will be okay when so many people just realize that the earth is flat from, these debates or billboards or whatever it is. That's great. It's fine. It's needed. That information is needed. But that's not even into the chapter 1 yet. That's the introduction. How long will flat earth continue to read the introduction of this book of enslavement? How long will you preach the introduction of this book of enslavement as the end all be all of what this illusion actually reveals, what it really means? How long will that commercial entertaining ass perspective be the forefront of this realization? What are the next steps? You call yourself a critical thinker? You're not a critical thinker if you're just regurgitating thoughts that have already been thought by other people. Critical thinkers actually think critically about those thoughts that have been put together and expand the storyline. Just because you're talking about critical thoughts doesn't make you a critical thinker. So what's next?